Welcome to the 323 podcast, where we look at how faith and work intersect. Each week, we talk to business leaders and difference makers about honoring God in the way we lead, create, and serve, because in everything we do, our work can reflect the one we serve. Building a business is hard work. It can be lonely, isolating, and exhausting. But imagine on top of everything else, having to battle chronic illness. That's exactly what my guest today has done. Shelbi spent years helping others get stronger as a personal trainer and functional nutrition specialist. Then one day, Shelbi found her own body beginning to fail on her. Despite discouraging diagnoses and ongoing health challenges, Shelbi started Hope Lives Here, a platform for Christians facing chronic illness. Today, Shelbi is going to share what it's like to lead, build, and trust God even when your body's saying no. Welcome to the 323 podcast, Shelbi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm really, really happy to be here.
Before we talk about your health journey, tell me, who was Shelbi before the chronic illness existed?
Yeah, it's a funny question for me because when I think of who I was before this, it is so different. I was always known as the energy bunny. So for me, I could work 3 jobs and serve at the church starting at 6 a.m., go to bed at midnight, wake up the next day and do it again. And that was my entire life. So before the illness, I was involved in many things. I served at my local church on the youth group. I did worship as well over there. And then on top of that, ran my own personal business with functional nutrition and strength and conditioning. So I worked at a local gym in the area, helped start up their nutrition program. And even before that, I ran an online business to where I trained people online and would start bringing people even to my house. My husband, he's great. He set up a gym for me in there. So we had people come in and we would train them in the gym. And it was busy. It was busy. It was fun. It was filled with a lot of people, a lot of talking, a lot of engagement, and I loved it. I mean, every part of my life, truly, if you met me back then, I would have been saying, I'm walking in my calling. I'm doing everything I was meant to do. So before the illness, that was really the outline of what my life looked like.
And it seems like physical activity was a thread ran through all of that.
Yes, absolutely. In college, I played soccer. I played soccer for as long as I could remember. I was a 3-sport athlete. Really, I think 3 sports growing up. And so I think even the concept of just busyness, you're always going, you're always doing. I remember being in high school, being in club soccer as well as playing volleyball and then training for basketball coming up. So exercise was such a big part of who I was. And for me, it was so intertwined with my spirituality as well. And so anytime I would be wrestling with something, when you're in high school, when you're in middle school, even when you're in college, there's so much of an identity crisis that you go through. And so I would just go for a run, or I would, go for a really long walk, or I would go in the weight room, and that's where I would talk with the Lord. And so to kind of have that stripped away it was not only a stripping of my identity, but it was a rebuilding of even who is God, because he was so real to me in those moments of activity. And so who is God in rest and in stillness and in silence, which I think is a hard concept for many of us to grasp, especially in the fast-paced world that we're in currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though one of Scripture's frequent themes is rest.
Yes.
We don't get it.
Yes.
So many of us put that on the back burner and, I'll rest when you're dead kind of mentality for so many, especially type A driven people.
Yes, absolutely.
So what was it that drew you to personal training and functional nutrition?
Yeah, so the personal training side, I remember being in high school. I was 16 years old, and I had made the decision that I wanted to go to college to play soccer. So I let my parents know, hey, I want to get serious about it. And it was a little bit later in my life, like 16 is a bit late to be like, this is what I want to do, but I made that decision, and my parents got me plugged in with a coach named John Ybarra, and he coached at a local facility called MVP. And he was just incredible. He changed my entire life. And within 4 weeks, I went from, again, I was a dual sport athlete, but I went from basketball I was not good at. I was good at soccer, but I was just an athlete. So, I would try out for all the things. And I went from scoring maybe 2 points a game in basketball to I was scoring 20 to 22 points. So when that happened, not only, does your confidence grow, but you just start to get really, fascinated with the physiology. I was just fascinated with how the body works and how it adapts and, general adaptation, the GAS, like how that works within the body. And so from that moment, I told John, I said, you know what, you inspired me to want to go and pursue exercise physiology, exercise science. And in terms of the nutrition piece of it, when I started my business, I started to realize that fat loss and strength training with women post-menopause is very different. And I was very young. I was 23 when I started my business. And I was running into these women who were doing everything that I was asking. And I'm this young, bippy blonde, just like, well, this is what you do. You eat less and you move more and you lose weight. That doesn't work the older that you get because hormones come into play. Stress comes into play. Autoimmune disease comes into play. So that's when I got involved in a program called FNMS, Functional Nutrition and Metabolic Specialization. Fantastic program by Sam Miller. Did a really, really great job producing that content for coaches who didn't have a background in, medical in medical school. Because what we're dealing with when it comes to the functional side of things is you are still dealing with blood work and you're dealing with hormones, you're dealing with gut dysfunction, you're dealing with chronic stress. And so when I started running into women with those issues, I decided I need to take my business a step further. And that's when I stepped into the functional nutrition space, got plugged in with a couple of doctors there, became a health coach for them, and really, again, felt like this is it. Like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And even in the midst of that, I mean, I did want to still share the gospel, and I was. So I felt like not only was I helping people with their physical and their internal health, but I was also being given an opportunity to share the gospel. Because it's almost like when you train with a trainer, you're going to get your hair done. When you sit down with your hairdresser, you start telling her your entire life story because you're just there for long enough. And there's a transformation that's taking place when you're seated in that chair. You're trusting this woman to do something with your hair that you're going to like the outcome of. So when people start to trust you in that way with their bodies, they become a lot more vulnerable. And so for me, I was like, I'm doing it all, right? I'm doing what I wanted with nutrition as well as training, but I'm also still staying in my lane of sharing the gospel of Christ, which was always so close and something I wanted to do. So that's how I got into it, and I think a little bit, too, of my heart in the midst of it as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So amazing to be in a place where you just know this is what God made you for. And I've had moments in my career like that too, where I just thought everything in my career, everything in my life has led to this moment.
Yeah.
And then things change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily just stay. In fact, it almost always changes. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about when you realized that change was happening.
Yeah. Wow. So it was about 3.5 years ago, actually, this month. I started to, more from a health standpoint or more of a mental standpoint? Because I think there was shifts in both.
Well, I'd like to hear both. Yeah, tell me about both.
Okay, so when we came here to El Paso, and I really started getting involved in my church, it was there that the community started to pour into me in a way that I really hadn't been poured into before. And again, I was a part of ministry. I was actually a youth pastor for my last year of college. I decided to take college online, come home, and be a youth pastor, and that was the best year of my life. I'm not going to lie. It was the best year of my life. Like, kids have always been my heart. I always said from the beginning, I want like 6 to 10 kids, and I just want to just love on them, all the things. And so when I was in doing my youth pastoring job then and then stepped away, got married, went into more of the functional nutrition, personal training space, I kind of thought ministry was behind me. Like, okay, that was something that I did, but now this is where God has me. Well, when I got plugged in here to this church, they started pouring into me in ways that I just hadn't been poured into before. And they were calling things out of me that I didn't even see of, hey, I think you were made to teach. I think you were made to lead. I think you were made to be in the body of Christ in some way. And so they started giving me these roles where they would say, hey, Shelby, like, after we sing this song, you just want to talk for a little bit? And I'd say, sure, and they would just tell me, whatever you feel like the Lord's telling you, just do it. And so they were equipping and empowering me in a way that made me start to think, maybe I do need to shift back into a ministry role. And so that happened those thought processes were happening about 4.5 years ago. And then fast forward a year, and that's when I started to experience symptoms of my chronic illness. And it was, I'll be really honest with you, Tiffany, it took God probably 3 years. And again, I've been in it for 3.5. So it's only been in the last 6 months that I have fully surrendered and said to him, all right, I let go of the former things and I will step into what is new, even though it doesn't look the way that I would want. Yeah. And I can elaborate on that more if you'd like a little bit later with the chronic illness piece of it. But I would say that's the timeline and where the shift started.
Would you be willing to share what were the symptoms that first triggered you? Like, there's something wrong, like that indicated to you?
Yeah. So the first symptom, I was actually having rashes all over my body. So it started on my knees. And so I was thinking like, okay, contact dermatitis. Like it's probably just something along those lines, whatever. And we were actually on vacation at the time. So I thought, all right, like we're overseas, we're on vacation. I probably just came in contact with something here. We're fine. I started on that trip just getting super nauseous. I started noticing I was losing a lot of weight. And again, I was working out like 2-3 times a day just because that's what I did. It was fun. It was my job. And so I just thought, well, whatever. Like people on vacation, they're always like, I gain weight. I'm like, I lose weight because I move a lot more. I'm always like, let's go run in the morning and let's do this. And so I didn't think a whole lot of it until we got home. And I started experiencing some more extreme symptoms. I started in the middle of the night shaking and shivering. I couldn't fall asleep. I've always been a pretty decent sleeper. I started having insomnia. I started having really intense bouts of distrust, and it was a super odd symptom. But people, like my husband, my friends, my family, I would just all of a sudden be on the defense of like, I almost felt like they were going to hurt me in a way. It was so weird. And I didn't understand what was going on. I understand a little bit more now, but that started happening. And then I started having food reactions, and it got to the point where my throat would start to swell and it would close, eating normal things like chicken and rice, just very basic things. And so once those symptoms started happening, I connected with my functional doctor that I was a health coach for, and I was like, hey, what's going on here? And she's like, you were overseas when all of this happened. You more than likely got a parasite. And so we went down the whole process of, okay, let's start doing these parasite cleanses and whatever. And we started doing that. 70% of my symptoms improved, but there was a 30% that didn't improve / started to get worse in a different direction. And so that was sort of when the spiral started. And I can go into even more of what the symptoms are or what they were if you would like. But that was really the beginning stages of everything for me.
Yeah. Tell me about your walk with God through that process. What did that look like?
Yeah. This is where it gets interesting for me, because it wasn't until that happened that I realized I had been very angry with the Lord. And part of that had to do with life not looking the way that I thought it would. And when you're younger and you're a kid, you just have so many dreams for life. And my parents were just so amazing at just constantly saying, like, dream big, dream, and what you want, like, Shelby, you can accomplish that. Like, you go for it, And so for me, I had these huge dreams truly of ministry, if I'm being honest. Like I had dreams of writing books, of doing podcasts, of standing on stages, of being in the body of Christ, just leading people in what it means to know the Lord. And I had dreams of having my own business and also having dreams of having 6 to 10 kids, like I just had these dreams. And I'm the type of person, like when I see something, I'm going to get it and it's going to happen. And I realized, I'm a lot older now when all of this is happening. And a lot of the things that I wanted, especially even kids and different things like that, like the clock is ticking, the time is ticking. And now I'm engaged, or I'm experiencing these health issues that I'm being told, hey, now all of these things are going to have to be on the back burner even more. And so my faith during that time, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I know deconstruction is kind of it's a term right now that's being thrown around as a bad thing, but I'm gonna be honest, like Jesus deconstructed me because he met me in that and said, 1, you don't like me, and 2, you don't trust me. And I remember this moment so clearly. I remember him saying to me, if we don't figure this out now, this next part of your journey is going to be really tough. And so at the same time that my body physically was breaking down, my faith was breaking down. And it was a really interesting space for me, because everything that I thought I had control of and had a good sense of what it looked like to be in these spaces, what it looked like to have a relationship with the Lord, what it looked like to have a business, what it looked like to have a healthy body, all of it was stripped. And I was left in the dust wondering, is God still the same in the dust as he is on the mountaintops? And is he still the same in the blessing as he is in the taking? Is God really good in the giving and the taking? I don't know. And that was where things really started to get very, very, very real. I would say before I thought I knew God. You asked me now, I'd say no. I did not know God until I went through what I went through with my illness.
Yeah. So much the story of Job, the why we read that book. And I love that you point out that God's not afraid of our fears. He's not afraid of our doubts. He wants us to verbalize those things. And sometimes we can't move forward until we are willing to admit.
Yes.
So such a great example. And we don't like, I don't think God puts us through difficult things to get us to that point, but
Correct.
I love that he uses difficult things
Correct.
to do that.
Yes, and I say that all the time. We say that all the time in our community. We talk about that so often, that hard questions are welcome here. Go through the whole entire books of Psalms. Like Psalm 77 is one of my favorite Psalms, and it asks the Lord, has your compassion left? Has your love failed? Have you stopped paying attention to me? Are you no longer good? Like questions that in the Christian, church and the body, we're going to be balking at those questions step by step. Hey, don't say that about God. I'm like, just open the Bible. Yeah. See what God had allowed to be in the Psalm. Psalm 88, one of my favorite Psalms, because at the end it says, darkness is a closer brother than you. Yeah. And that, beautiful, that we have a God going up there saying, yeah, be that honest with me, because not only can I handle it, but this is an opportunity for me to show you who I really am. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you on that point.
I had a conversation with my husband yesterday, and we were talking about trusting God, and he said, look at what David faced in the Bible, and he trusted God. And I said, yes, but he also had moments of doubting God. And read the Psalms. Like, he's very clear about that. God did not, he still was, chosen and favored by God. And so,
Yeah, your doubts do not disqualify you from whether or not God is going to use you. In fact, I think that your doubts is what continues to qualify you, because when you get into the dirt and you say, I don't know if you're the God of Abraham, if you're the God of Jacob, if you're the God of Isaac. I don't know if you're the God who actually does miracles. Are you Jehovah Rapha? Are you Yahweh? Because if you're claiming to be Yahweh, you're claiming to be the God of gods. You're claiming to be good. Like when Moses asked, who are you? After he says, I am who I am, and go tell them that. When he goes and talks to him in Exodus 34 about who he is, he says, I am Yahweh, Yahweh, the kind and compassionate God. My justice spans for 1,000, or my mercy spans for 1,000, my compassion 1,000 generations, but my justice for hundreds of generations. And when you look at that, you go to God and you say, okay, so you're telling me your compassion is even greater, it spans even more than your justice? I don't see that in my life. It's the same thing. And when we go back to Genesis 3 in the fall, what the serpent does with Eve, what are you seeing and what are you feeling? Because what you see and what you feel, it's not really lining up with what God says, is it? And so now the same tactics of the enemy all the way back in the beginning when the fall happened, they're happening in my heart and in my life. And I have to be willing to say, even though you sound so right, this is so tempting to believe you, I'm going to hang on to the hem of his garment and believe that even through the fire, I'm going to see a different version of him that's even greater than the version that I knew on the mountaintop. And that is a faith I did not know was inside of me. And I will say this, when Jesus said, I have not lost one of the sheep that God has given me, I am so convinced that the reason that I stayed close to God was not because of anything that I did, but because he was holding me. And I think that that's just a message that so many people need to hear, no matter where you're at and what you're suffering or struggling through. You do not have to muster up enough faith. You do not have to check these boxes and do these things in order to be enough. It is God who sustains you. It is God who holds you. It is God who says, that's my kid, and I'm not letting them go. And so the beauty of learning that almost makes the suffering worth it, because it's a side of God and it's a piece of God that will change you for the rest of your life. And I am utterly convinced that there is no other God but the God that we serve. Utterly convinced.
Let's go.
Yeah, and the only reason I believe that is because he brought me so low. I felt like a worm. I remember telling him that. I'm like, I feel like a worm. I feel like dust. Where are you in this? Do not let me go further into dust, because who's going to praise you? I was telling him, you're going to miss me. You're going to, and then I come to find there's a psalm. David is actually saying that, where he's like, you've made me lower than the dust. I feel like a worm. Can the rocks cry out to you? You're going to miss hearing me. And I was like, man, I'm lamenting and I didn't even know it, but for God to be okay with that and to say, yeah, come here. Let me hear this. Let me hear what you got to say, because let me show you I'm the God in the fire. I'm the God who answers. I'm the God who sees. I'm the God who hears. And I'm the God who leads you out of Egypt into the wilderness, sustains you in the wilderness. And when the time is right, I will bring you to the promised land. Amen. And that's
Amen.
It's a hard journey to walk.
It is. It's much easier once you're kind of through that desert.
Yes.
But walking through it is really hard. And I'm sure there were
Yes.
some moments where, like you said, just hanging on by the hem of the garment.
100%.
And that's what got you through that.
Yes.
So tell me how chronic illness has changed the way you define success.
Well, I used to think success was measured by productivity, and I now think that success is measured by my ability to stay in the present moment. And that is difficult, but something that we preach so much, even in our organization, in our community, is God is not looking at you saying you must do. When you look at, again, just going back to Genesis, when God finished creating the world, many, many theologians believe that God is still resting because on that seventh day he rested. That was it. And he's like, all right, go multiply, go have fun, go do your thing, right? Like, go be who I created you to be. There was no stipulations on us during that time. So when you think about who is it that God wanted us to be, he wants us to be restored back to that garden. From Genesis all the way to Revelation, there is a restoration of what God wanted. And honestly, I'm not seeing a whole lot of work in there. I'm not seeing a whole lot of striving. I'm not seeing a whole lot of, you have to do this in order to earn this. I'm seeing the lamb was slain and the blood was enough. And from the beginning of time, Jesus was the answer. And from the end of time, he will be magnified and glorified. And so my success in life, how I measure what looks like success, it's, did I abide with my Father today? Because to know my journey is to know that I was bedridden for quite some time, to know that I couldn't work for even longer, couldn't look at a computer screen, couldn't talk to friends for longer than 5 minutes, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't cook dinner, couldn't sweep my floors. And, as a woman, as a wife, you always feel like you're not enough, but you're too much all at the same time. Yeah. And chronic illness doesn't take that away. You still wrestle with that. And it was in that the Lord redefined it for me. He said, no, you're enough just because you're my kid. You've done enough today because guess what? You spent some time with me. And to be that unconditionally loved, he wants us to know that. He wants us to see it and he wants us to rest in it. But sometimes people like me are very stubborn and we don't see it until it's smack dab right in our face and we don't have another option besides to redefine what does it mean to have purpose? What does it mean to be successful? What does it mean to have value? So I would say abiding in Christ. That's it.
I love it. And, we look John 15:5, abide in me and I'm the vine, you're the branches, abide in me and you will bear fruit.
Absolutely.
And so again, where is the success? Just abiding in him. Amen. He's going to bring the fruit.
Yes.
So I love this. We only have a few minutes left and we haven't even gotten to talk about Hope Lives Here. Yeah. So I'm going to have you come on for a second episode. Love and it. I hope all of our listeners will tune back in for the second part. But just give us the 30-second or the 1-minute version of what is Hope. What did this all lead to?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hope Lives Here is currently an organization. We're working to become a nonprofit, and we will be in the next few weeks, which I'm very excited about. But we are a community of people based on walking with chronically ill Christians through prayer, small groups, worship nights, and fellowship, meeting each other in lament, and walking together toward hope. So the whole point of this organization is to take people who have chronic illness, who are Christians, who are wrestling deeply with the concept of Jesus in my suffering, who don't fully understand how could God be good and allow me to go through this. We are meeting that gap. We are meeting those people. These people too, most of them are bedridden, most of them are housebound. And so our community is completely online. It is all based on, through Instagram, through school, through Zoom meetings. Everything is online because these individuals that we are meeting are so sick that they cannot go elsewhere. And so that's really, I guess, the overview of what our community is, what we're providing, and the people that we are providing for.
And this started only in January of this year,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
You've been around for just over 6 months.
Yes.
And tell me just about the growth of the movement in the last 6 months.
It's been insane. My Instagram is where the majority of the things started. Well, it's where everything started and where everything really ended, and it's still going. I guess 600 followers in January. We're up to 20,000 plus. We gain another 100 every day. It's really all just by the grace of God that is happening. And then our school community, which is a platform where you can host different types of meetings, and you have a lot of freedom on there, which is great because I can flesh out exactly what I'm wanting to do. On that community, we went from 0 in the beginning of July, and we just started in August, to I think today we hit 112. And that, again, within a small month span. This is how many people are hopping on saying, hey, I need prayer. I need worship. That's not too stimulating. I need to be in a small group with people who understand what it looks like to walk with the Lord through suffering. Yeah,
and I think we as a church have done a great job in probably the last 10 or 15 years of beginning to understand mental health and the battle of mental health and support people in the church in the area of mental health, but I think this area of physical health and chronic illness is new for the church.
It is.
So we're going to have you back on again so you can tell more of the story of Hope Lives Here. But in the meantime, how can people find out more about Hope Lives Here?
Yes. So you can connect with us we'll have this in the show notes, but you can connect with us on Instagram. It's Hope_lives here. This is where all of the links will be. You'll be able to find our website. You'll be able to find the donation page. You'll also be able to find our email as well as the school community, where if you or someone you love is needing this encouragement, they're needing to be in prayer, worship, or small groups, you can go right on there, and that's where you'll find us. We do have a website. The link is a little long, though. Again, it'll be in the show notes, but you can find that in the show notes and on our Instagram and connect with us there.
Awesome. This is such an encouragement, and I think there's so many people who are just going to be just infinitely blessed, even just by the content you're putting out on Instagram. So, Shelbi, we'll continue this conversation. I look forward to hearing more about Hope Lives Here.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I really appreciate it.
If God is writing a story in your workplace, we'd love to hear about it. You can share it with us by visiting 323podcast.com. That's the numbers 323podcast.com. We'll be back again next week with more great conversations on connecting your Sunday faith to your Monday life. Until then, may God bless your work this week. May He renew your strength, deepen your joy, and remind you that you're serving Him in all you do.